Hey Chloe, I'm just going to do a couple problems here. So I think the problems you're asking about were similar to this. They're asking you to find the cosine if you know the sine is 3/8. So what you want to picture is you have a triangle, a right triangle, and you have a theta. It doesn't matter where you put it. But if you think sine is always opposite over hypotenuse, so then you know that the opposite side from theta is 3 and the hypotenuse is 8. So the opposite side from theta would be 3 and the hypotenuse would be 8. And if they're asking you to find the cosine, you know that cosine of theta is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So if this is where your theta is, this is the adjacent side, which we don't know. We know the hypotenuse will be 8. So we need to figure out the adjacent side, and you can use Pythagorean theorem to do that. So remember, it's side squared plus side squared equals hypotenuse squared. So you'd have this. So that's the same as 9 plus b squared equals 64, minus 9 from both sides. B squared equals 64 minus 9 is 55. And then square root both sides. So b is going to equal the square root of 55. And when it says the exact answer, they do not want you to put this in your calculator and get a decimal equivalent. They want the square root, and if the square root can be simplified, they want it simplified. This cannot be simplified because I think the only factors are 5 and 11, so there's no factors that are a perfect square. So then the cosine would be square root of 55 over 8. Also, I think they tell you what quadrant. For this problem, they told you it was quadrant 1. And if you think about in quadrant 1, everything's positive, so you wouldn't have a negative. So what you would picture here is drawing your triangle in quadrant 1. So all of your sides would be positive because you would go up and over. There was another one that was kind of the same idea, just a little bit trickier. They asked you to find the tangent, and they gave you the secant, and they told you the secant was 3. So this is the same idea. This one's just trickier. Secant, first thing you want to remember is secant is the same as 1 over cosine. And that you just kind of have to remember that secant goes with cosine and cosecant goes with sine. So what I want to think is, think about if secant is 1, secant over 1 is 1 over cosine. Think about flipping both sides of these fractions. So I can say 1 over secant is the same as cosine. So basically, secant and cosine are reciprocals of each other. So if the secant is 3, that means the cosine is 1 over 3. So then again, you draw an angle, or right triangle, put your theta, doesn't matter whether you put it here or here. If the cosine is 1 over 3, that means the adjacent side, the side that touches my angle, is 1, and my hypotenuse is 3. I can find this other side by using Pythagorean theorem. So that would be a squared plus 1 equals 9, minus 1 minus 1. A squared equals 8. A equals square root of 8. So this side would be square root of 8. Now they asked me to find the tangent. So tangent, if you think about opposite and adjacent, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So tangent leaves out the hypotenuse. So opposite over adjacent would be, so I'm doing tan. Tan of theta would be square root of 8 over 1, or just square root of 8. I wanted to see if they gave you a quadrant for that one. Oh, I can't find that problem now. They do give you a quadrant. Trying to see what quadrant they gave for that one. Give me a minute. This was also a quadrant 1, so that means this would be positive. So if they give you another quadrant, for example, say they said that the angle was in quadrant 2, so that would be your triangle, and then this value would be negative because you're getting to that point. So your x would be negative, your y would be positive. So pay attention to what quadrant they tell you. Okay, hopefully that helps. If you need more help, let me know.